On my son's birthday, I tried to hug him, to wish him a happy one. He pushed me away hard and shouted, "Don't touch me! Can't you see I'm busy?" That was when my granddaughter led me to the corner of the living room. "Are you okay?" Chloe asked me with tears in her eyes. I smiled and replied, "I'm perfectly fine. By the way, that was the last time he would ever treat me like that." The next day, when he woke up, I was already gone, leaving nothing but a letter on the dining room table. But so you can understand how a mother reaches that breaking point, I need to tell you everything from the beginning. I need you to know that this decision wasn't impulsive, nor was it the product of a moment's rage. It was the result of years of humiliation, of silent contempt, of being treated like a nuisance in my own home. Richard's birthday party was in full swing when it all happened. The living room was packed with people, my son's friends, colleagues from work, neighbors. Vanessa had decorated everything with gold and silver balloons, hired a high-end catering service, and music was blasting from the huge speakers they had set up on the patio. I had spent the entire afternoon in the kitchen helping with the prep work, even though no one asked me to, and certainly no one thanked me. I chopped vegetables, organized trays, and washed dishes. Vanessa swept past me, barking orders at the catering staff without even looking at me, as if I were part of the furniture. When the guests arrived, I stayed in a corner, trying not to be in the way. Some people greeted me with forced politeness, that courtesy reserved for the elderly woman of the house, but no one stayed to chat with me for more than 2 minutes. I watched Richard move among his friends, laughing, making toasts, accepting congratulations. He looked so happy, so alive. For a moment, I felt that maternal pride that never really goes away, no matter how much everything else hurts. That was my son, the baby I carried, the boy I raised, the man I helped shape. And on an impulse, perhaps out of nostalgia, or perhaps because deep down I still held on to the hope that some part of the affectionate boy he once was still remained, I walked over to him. Richard had his back to me, talking to 3 men in suits. They were all holding glasses of whiskey and talking business. I approached slowly, waiting for the right moment so I wouldn't interrupt. When there was a pause in the conversation, I gently touched his shoulder. "Happy birthday, son," I said with a smile. I extended my arms to hug him, just as I had done on every single one of his birthdays for 45 years. It was our ritual. Or at least, it used to be. But Richard turned toward me with an expression I will never forget. It wasn't surprise. It wasn't discomfort. It was pure annoyance, as if a persistent fly had interrupted something important. And then, he shoved me. It wasn't a gentle movement to guide me aside. It was a hard, deliberate shove, full of disdain. "Don't touch me! Can't you see I'm busy?" he yelled. His voice boomed over the music, over the conversations. The entire room seemed to freeze. The people nearest to us turned to look. The men Richard was talking to stood frozen, not knowing where to look. I took a step back, stumbling slightly. I felt every pair of eyes drilling into me. The heat of shame rose up my neck to my cheeks. My hands, which seconds earlier were reaching out to hug my son, now hung by my sides, unsure of what to do. Richard didn't even look at me after that. He simply turned around and continued his conversation as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't just humiliated his own mother in front of dozens of people. The men he was speaking with exchanged awkward glances, but none of them said anything. One of them cleared his throat and went back to the business topic they were discussing. Life went on for them, for everyone but me. I stood there, feeling the world moving around me, while I remained motionless, frozen in my humiliation. I could hear the murmurs, the hushed voices of the ladies commenting on what they had just witnessed. "Poor woman," I heard someone whisper. "How disrespectful," said another voice. But no one came over. No one came to comfort me or ask if I was okay. They just stared, commented in low voices, and then went back to their conversations as if witnessing the mistreatment of an old woman was just an awkward detail at an otherwise pleasant party. That was when I felt a small, warm hand take mine. Chloe appeared at my side like an angel in the middle of a storm. "Grandma, come with me," she whispered. Her voice was trembling. When I looked at her, I saw tears pooling in her eyes. My granddaughter, barely 16 years old, was the only one in that room full of adults showing genuine compassion. She guided me to the corner of the living room, away from the center of attention, away from the prying eyes. We sat together on a small love seat by the window. From there, we could watch the party continue as if nothing had happened. Chloe took my hands in hers. They were shaking. "Are you okay, Grandma?" she asked, and her voice cracked at the end of the question. I looked into her eyes, those dark eyes that looked so much like my late husband's, those eyes that still held kindness, empathy, real love. And for the first time in a long time, I decided to be completely honest. "I'm perfectly fine, sweetheart," I told her, with a calmness that surprised me. "By the way, this is the last time he treats me like this." Chloe looked at me in confusion, trying to understand exactly what I meant. "What are you going to do?" she whispered. But I just squeezed her hands tenderly and smiled. It wasn't the time for explanations. Not yet. First, I needed to be sure of my decision. I needed to have everything clear in my mind. We sat there for the rest of the night. Chloe didn't leave my side for a moment. Every now and then she would ask if I wanted to leave, if I wanted to go up to my room. But I shook my head. I wanted to stay. I wanted to observe. I wanted to burn every detail of that night into my memory because I knew it would be the last time I participated in something like this. I watched Richard laugh with his friends, receive gifts, blow out the candles on his cake. Vanessa circulated among the guests like the perfect hostess, making sure everyone had drinks, food, and attention. They were the ideal couple in everyone's eyes. No one knew what went on inside this house. No one knew how they treated me when there were no witnesses. No one knew that I, the original owner of this property, lived like a servant in my own home. The party ended past midnight. The guests left one by one, leaving behind empty glasses, dirty plates, and crumpled napkins all over the house. Vanessa said goodbye to the last ones with kisses on the cheek and that radiant smile she reserved for appearances. When the door closed behind the last guest, her smile vanished, as if someone had flipped a switch. "What a mess," she muttered, looking at the living room. Then her eyes landed on me, still sitting on the love seat next to Chloe. "Margaret, I want this spotless early tomorrow morning. I don't want to see a single stain on the furniture." It wasn't a request. It was an order. As always, Richard went up the stairs without saying a word, stumbling slightly from the alcohol. He didn't even look at me as he passed. To him, I didn't exist anymore. Maybe I never really existed, at least not as a person with feelings, with dignity. Chloe squeezed my hand. "Grandma, I'll help you clean tomorrow," she whispered. I shook my head gently. "No, sweetheart. You have school. Go to sleep." "But..." "Go to sleep, Chloe. Everything will be fine." She looked at me with those worried eyes, hesitating, but finally nodded and gave me a kiss on the cheek before going up to her room. When I heard her door close, I was left alone in the middle of the chaotic living room. I looked around, balloons deflating in the corners, leftover food on the tables, wine stains on the rug. This house, my house, the house I built with my husband over years of hard work and sacrifice, was now the stage for my own invisibility. But that night, I didn't clean anything. For the first time in 5 years, I didn't obey. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last, and went into my room, the one that used to be the master bedroom, the one I shared with my husband for 43 years. Now Richard and Vanessa slept there. I had been relegated to the guest room, smaller, with a twin bed and a window that looked out onto the back alley instead of the garden. "It's more comfortable for you, Mom," Richard had said when they suggested the switch. "Smaller, easier to keep clean. And our king-size bed doesn't fit in the guest room." I accepted without protesting, just as I accepted everything in those days. I was still numb from grief, still feeling lost without my husband. I thought it was temporary, that eventually things would settle. How naive I was. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked around the room. There wasn't much. A small closet with my clothes, a nightstand with my husband's photograph, an old lamp, nothing else. Everything else, all the beautiful furniture we bought together, all the decorations I chose with such care, now adorned the rest of the house under Vanessa's control. She had redesigned everything. She changed the curtains, replaced the paintings, moved the furniture. She erased every trace of the life my husband and I built here, replacing it with her own taste, her own vision, and I let her do it. because I was tired, because I was sad, because I thought it didn't matter, that they were just things, that what mattered was family. But that night, sitting on my twin bed in the smallest room of my own house, I realized it wasn't just things I had lost. I lost my place, my voice, my worth. I became a shadow, a nuisance tolerated out of charity. I didn't sleep that night. I sat there looking at my husband's photograph, remembering better times. I remembered when we bought this land 30 years ago. It was an empty lot on the outskirts of town, surrounded by fields and trees. It cost $15,000, a fortune for us back then. We saved for 5 years, working double shifts, sacrificing vacations, denying ourselves small luxuries. I remembered when we laid the first stone of the foundation, my husband and I, along with 2 contractors we hired, digging under the burning sun. I brought lemonade and sandwiches for everyone. We worked until it got dark. I remembered every stage of the construction, the walls going up brick by brick, the roof being installed, the windows being placed, the floors being polished. Every dollar we spent, every decision we made, was ours. Together, this house wasn't just a property. It was our dream materialized. It was the testament to our love, our effort, our hopes for the future. And now I felt like an intruder in it. When the sun began to rise, I finally moved. I pulled an old suitcase from the closet, the one my husband and I used for our trips. It still had the tag from the last place we visited together, a coastal town where we spent our 40th anniversary. I started packing. I didn't have much. Clothes, some toiletries, my husband's photograph, a couple of pieces of jewelry he gave me over the years. Everything fit in that suitcase with room to spare. How sad, I thought. 68 years of life, and everything that truly belonged to me fit in a small suitcase. When I finished, I took a pen and paper from a drawer. I sat on the bed and began to write. The letter that would change everything. Richard, I began. My hand was shaking, not from fear, but from the intensity of everything I needed to say, everything I had kept silent for years. I wrote for an hour. Every word came directly from the wounds I carried in my soul. It wasn't a standard goodbye letter. It was a testimony. It was my truth finally released after being imprisoned for so long. I reminded him who built this house. I reminded him of the sacrifices his father and I made to give him a good life, an education, opportunities. I reminded him how I took care of him when he was sick as a child, how I worked cleaning other people's houses to pay for his music lessons, how his father took 2 jobs so he could go to college. I wrote to him about the last 5 years, about how I became a servant in my own house, about how Vanessa gave me orders as if I were her employee, about how he looked the other way every time she spoke to me with contempt. I wrote to him about the small daily cruelties that perhaps he didn't even notice because they had become so normal, how they ate without waiting for me, how they made decisions about the house without consulting me, how they talked about me in the third person while I was present, how they excluded me from important family gatherings. I wrote to him about the humiliation of last night, about how he pushed me away in front of all those guests, about how he yelled at me as if I were an annoying stranger, about how none of those present knew that I was the true owner of the house where they were celebrating. And finally, I wrote to him about my decision. I'm leaving, I wrote. Not because I hate you, not because I don't love you. I'm leaving because I love myself enough not to stay where I'm not valued. I'm leaving because I deserve peace in the years I have left. I'm leaving because this house, even though I built it with my own hands, is no longer my home. I signed the letter with my full name, Margaret Sullivan, not Mom, not your mother. Just my name, reclaiming my identity beyond the role I played for him. I folded the letter carefully and put it in an envelope. I wrote Richard on the front in clear handwriting. It was 6 in the morning. The house was still sleeping. I could hear Richard snoring from the master bedroom. Vanessa would probably sleep until 10, as she always did after her parties. I took my suitcase and went down the stairs, careful not to make noise. Each step creaked under my feet, sounds I knew by heart after so many years. In the living room, last night's mess was still intact. Vanessa would expect to find me cleaning when she woke up. She would expect to see me on my knees picking up trash, washing dishes, putting the furniture back in its place. But I wouldn't be there. I left the letter on the dining room table, right in the center where it couldn't be missed. I propped it against the empty vase that used to hold the roses my husband gave me every anniversary. I looked around one last time. This living room where I played with Richard when he was a boy. This kitchen where I prepared thousands of meals. This garden visible through the window where my husband planted the rose bush that still blooms every spring. So many memories, so many years, so much life lived between these walls. And now, silence, emptiness. Nothing holding me back except the pain. I opened the front door slowly. The fresh morning air hit my face. Outside, the street was still dark, the street lamps casting circles of yellowish light on the pavement. I had called a cab the night before. I asked the driver to wait at the corner at 6 o'clock sharp. I didn't want the sound of the engine to wake anyone. I closed the door behind me without making a sound. I didn't lock it because it didn't make sense anymore. This was no longer my house to protect. I walked down the driveway, dragging my suitcase. The wheels made a soft sound against the stones my husband and I placed one by one decades ago. The cab was exactly where I said, with the lights off. The driver, an older man around 50, got out to help me with the suitcase. "Are you sure, ma'am?" he asked me in a low voice, as if he sensed that this was more than just a simple trip. I nodded, completely sure. I got into the back seat and gave him the address. A small hotel downtown where I would stay while I looked for an apartment. I had saved money for years, kept in an account I had opened secretly 6 months ago when I began to suspect I would need an exit. As the cab drove away, I looked back one last time. The house grew smaller and smaller in the distance. The dark windows, the silent garden, the roof under which I raised my son and loved my husband. I didn't cry. I had no tears left for that place. The hotel was modest but clean. A room on the 3rd floor with a double bed, a small bathroom, and a window facing the main street. It cost $40 a night, an amount I could pay with my savings for at least 2 months while I found something permanent. The receptionist, a young woman with her hair pulled back in a ponytail, looked at me with curiosity when I arrived so early in the morning with my single suitcase. But she didn't ask questions. She just handed me the room key and wished me a pleasant stay. I climbed the stairs slowly. My knees weren't the same as before, and every step reminded me of my 68 years. When I finally reached my room, I closed the door behind me and dropped the suitcase on the floor. Then, and only then, did I allow myself to breathe. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked around. This small room, with its beige walls and generic furniture, was mine. No one would yell at me here. No one would give me orders. No one would make me feel like I was in the way. For the first time in 5 years, I was alone. But I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. I don't know how much time passed before my phone started ringing. I had left it on a purpose. I wanted Richard to be able to reach me if he really cared. I wanted to see if, after reading my letter, he would make the effort to look for me. The phone vibrated on the nightstand. Richard's name lit up the screen. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. Finally, it stopped. Seconds later, it started ringing again. This time I answered, "Where are you?" It was the first thing he said. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "What happened?" Just, "Where are you?" "In a safe place," I replied calmly. "Mom, this is ridiculous. Come back home right now." I closed my eyes. Even now, even after everything, he was still giving me orders. He still assumed I would obey without question. "Did you read my letter?" I said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, I read your dramatic letter." "Mom, you're exaggerating everything. It was just a moment of stress at the party. I had a lot on my mind, a lot of important guests. It wasn't the time for what?" I interrupted him. "For your mother to give you a birthday hug? For her to remind you that I exist?" There was silence on the other end of the line. "It's not just the party, Richard," I continued. "It's everything. These last 5 years, the way Vanessa talks to me, the way you allow her to talk to me, the way I became a servant in my own house." "That's our house now too," he replied, and his voice had a defensive tone. "Vanessa and I live there. We contribute to the expenses. You can't pretend everything is still like when Dad was alive." I felt something break inside me. Not pain this time, something different. Clarity. Absolute clarity about who my son really was. The expenses. I repeated slowly. Richard, that house is paid for. Your father and I finished paying the mortgage 15 years ago. The only expenses are utilities and maintenance, which I continue to pay with my pension. You two don't contribute anything. Another silence. I heard him breathing heavily. Besides, I continued, that house is in my name. Only in my name. When your father died, I inherited everything because that's how we stipulated it in our will. So yes, I can pretend whatever I want regarding my property. Mom, don't do this. Don't turn this into a legal matter. I'm not turning it into anything. I'm just stating the facts. Vanessa yelled something in the background that I couldn't make out. I heard Richard cover the phone with his hand, muffled voices arguing. Then he came back. Vanessa says you left the entire living room a mess, that it's disrespectful. I laughed. It was a short, bitter laugh, but genuine. How interesting. I'm disrespectful for not cleaning up her party, but pushing me and screaming at me in front of dozens of people isn't. Mom, I already told you it was a moment of stress. Besides, you've always been very sensitive. You get offended by everything. There it was. The manipulation I knew so well. Turning it into my fault. Making my pain an exaggeration. A weakness of character. I'm not coming back, Richard. At least not now. I need time. I need space. And can I know where you are? What hotel? That doesn't matter. Of course it matters. You're my mother. I have a right to know where you are. I'm 68 years old, not 6. I don't need you to know my location at all times. I hung up before he could answer. The phone rang again immediately. I turned it off. I lay back on the bed and looked at the ceiling. There were cracks in the plaster forming irregular patterns. I studied them, trying to find shapes in them like I did when I was a girl looking at clouds. My phone remained off on the nightstand. I knew Richard would keep trying to call. I knew Vanessa would be furious, probably telling him that I was crazy, that I needed to be in a home, that this proved I couldn't take care of myself anymore. But for the first time in a long time, their opinions didn't matter to me. I spent the next few days in that hotel room, establishing a new routine. I woke up early, went down to the small hotel diner for breakfast, then walked through the nearby park. The afternoons were spent looking for apartments for rent in the newspaper and making calls. It wasn't easy. Many landlords hesitated when they heard my age. We're looking for younger tenants, some said. Do you live alone? Do you have family that can be a reference? Others asked, but I persisted. Because the alternative was going back. And that was no longer an option. On the third day, I turned on my phone. I had 27 missed calls from Richard and 12 voicemails. I didn't listen to any of them. There were also 3 text messages from Chloe. Grandma, where are you? I'm worried. Mom and Dad are fighting all the time. The house is chaos. Please, let me know you're okay. I miss you. I replied only to her. I'm okay, sweetheart. I'm safe and at peace. Don't worry about me. I'll call you soon. Her reply arrived in seconds. Grandma, can I see you? I need to talk to you. I hesitated. I didn't want to involve Chloe in this. She was just a kid caught in the middle of an adult conflict. But I also knew she deserved to know I was okay, that I hadn't disappeared forever. We can meet tomorrow. I'll send you the address of a coffee shop. Don't tell your parents. Promised. The next day, I arrived early at the coffee shop I chose. A small place 3 blocks from the hotel. I ordered a coffee and sat by the window where I could see the street. Chloe arrived exactly at the agreed time. I saw her get out of a cab, look around nervously, and then enter. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. She ran toward me and hugged me so tight I almost ran out of air. Grandma, she sobbed against my shoulder. I thought something terrible had happened to you. I'm okay, my darling. I'm perfectly fine. We sat down, and I ordered a hot chocolate for her. For several minutes we just looked at each other, her wiping away tears, me holding her hand across the table. Why did you leave like that? She finally asked, without saying goodbye. Because if I had said goodbye, your father would have tried to stop me. And I needed to leave, Chloe. I needed to get out of that house before I finished losing everything I am. I know, she whispered. I've seen how they treat you, how Mom talks to you, how Dad acts like you don't exist. I've always wanted to say something, but it's not your responsibility, sweetheart. You don't have to defend me. You are my granddaughter, not my protector. But I love you, and it hurts me to see you suffer. I squeezed her hand. I'm not suffering anymore. For the first time in years, I'm not suffering. Chloe took a sip of her hot chocolate and looked at me with those wise eyes that young people sometimes have. Are you going to come back? She asked. I don't know. Maybe someday, if things change. But not soon. Dad is freaking out. He keeps calling you. Mom, too, although she's more angry than worried. And you? Are you okay living there? Chloe shrugged. It's uncomfortable. They fight a lot now. Mom blames Dad for letting you go. Dad says you're being dramatic. I just try to stay out of it. It hurt me to hear that. My granddaughter, trapped in the middle, trying to navigate the mess my departure had caused. I'm sorry, Chloe. I know this is hard for you. Don't apologize, Grandma. You did the right thing. I just want you to be happy. We spent 2 hours in that coffee shop. I told her about the hotel, about my apartment search, about my plans to start a new life. She told me about school, about her friends, about her dreams of going to college. When we finally said goodbye, I made her promise to keep me informed about how things were at home. Not because I wanted to return, but because I needed to know what was happening. I needed to be prepared for what was coming, because something told me this was just beginning. A week after leaving, I found an apartment. It was small, a studio on the second floor of an old but well-maintained building. It had a tiny kitchen, a bathroom with a shower, and a main room that served as a bedroom and living area. It cost $400 a month, an amount I could comfortably pay with my pension of $650. The landlord was a man named Frank, about 70 years old, a widower like me. When I explained my situation, without going into dramatic details, just saying I needed my own space after living with my son, he nodded with understanding. My wife and I lived with our daughter the last years of her life, he told me while showing me the apartment. It was hard. Sometimes, generations aren't meant to live under the same roof. Everyone needs their space, their peace. I signed the lease that same day. Frank gave me the keys with a kind smile and wished me good luck. For the first time in years, I felt real hope. I spent the next few days moving in. I didn't have much to transfer from the hotel, just my suitcase. But I needed furniture, kitchen utensils, bedding. I spent $1,200 of my savings buying the essentials at thrift stores. A bed, a small table, 2 chairs, pots, plates, sheets. Chloe came to help me one Saturday. She arrived carrying a box full of things she had rescued from my old room without her parents knowing. I found this hidden in the back of your closet, she told me. I didn't want Mom to throw it away. Inside the box were my photo albums, some letters my husband wrote me when we were dating, a shawl my mother knitted for me before she died, and a small jewelry box with the few pieces of jewelry I had left. I sat on the floor of my new empty apartment and cried, hugging that box. Chloe sat next to me and cried with me. Thank you, sweetheart, I whispered to her. This means more than you can imagine. We spent the day organizing the apartment. Chloe had a good eye for decoration. She arranged the furniture so the small space seemed larger. She hung curtains I bought at a discount store. She put my photographs on the shelf above the bed. By the afternoon, the place was beginning to look like a home. It's cozy, Chloe said, looking around with approval. Small, but yours. Exactly. It was small, but it was mine. Every object in this space was chosen by me. Every decision about where to put things was made by me. No one gave me orders. No one criticized me. No one made me feel like I was in the way. That night, after Chloe left, I made myself tea in my own kitchen and sat at my own table, looking out my own window. The view wasn't impressive. Just the street with some trees and the building across the way. But it was mine. I slept better that night than I had slept in years. The days turned into weeks. I established a routine. I woke up early, ate breakfast looking out the window, went for a walk in the nearby park. Some afternoons, I went to the public library to read. Other times, I simply sat in my apartment enjoying the silence, the peace, of not having to be constantly alert to the needs or demands of others. Richard kept calling occasionally. I answered sometimes, other times not. Our conversations were brief and tense. He insisted I return. I insisted I needed my space. Neither yielded. Vanessa never called. Not once. Which told me everything I needed to know about what she really felt for me. One day, while organizing the photo albums Chloe had rescued, I found something strange. Between the pages of one of the albums was an envelope I didn't remember putting there. I opened it with curiosity. Inside was a folded document. When I spread it out on the table, my heart began to beat faster. It was a copy of a loan application, in my name, for $25,000, with my signature at the bottom, but I had never applied for that loan. I looked at the date. It was from 8 months ago. The signature looked like mine, but there was something odd about it. The strokes were too careful, too perfect. My real signature was always a bit messy, quick. I felt the air escaping my lungs. Had they forged my signature? Why would I find this document hidden in my photo album? With trembling hands, I reached for my phone and called Chloe. "Grandma, what's wrong?" she answered on the third ring. "Chloe, the box you brought me. Where exactly did you find it?" "In your closet. I told you. It was in the back, behind the shoe boxes. Did you see who put it there?" "No. It was just there. I thought it was your stuff." "Why?" "Something is wrong." I didn't want to worry her, but I needed information. "Have you seen your dad or Vanessa handling documents lately? Important papers, bank stuff." There was a pause. "Well, yes. Mom and Dad have a ton of papers on the desk. Whenever I go into the study, they put them away fast. And about a month ago, I heard Mom talking on the phone about a debt or something. She went quiet when she saw me." My stomach twisted. "Chloe, I need you to do me a favor, but you have to be very careful. I don't want you to get in trouble." "What do you need?" "If you can, without them seeing you, try to see what those papers are. Take pictures with your phone if possible, but only if you can do it safely. If you can't, it doesn't matter." "Grandma, you're scaring me. What's going on?" "I'm not sure yet, but I think your dad and Vanessa are doing something they shouldn't. Something that involves me." Chloe promised to help me. We hung up, and I stayed staring at that document on my table. $25,000. It was a huge amount. What had they used it for, and how did they plan to pay it back? Then I remembered something. The power of attorney I signed years ago. When my husband died, Richard convinced me to sign a document giving him legal power over my financial affairs in case of an emergency. He told me it was normal, that it was in case I couldn't make decisions for myself one day. I signed without thinking much. I trusted my son. I thought he would never use that power unless it was truly necessary. But what if he had been using it all this time? The next day I went to the bank. It was the branch where I had my savings account for 30 years. The manager, a woman named Betty, whom I had known since she was a teller, greeted me with surprise. "Mrs. Sullivan, haven't seen you around here in a while. How are you?" "I need to check my accounts, Betty. All my accounts. And I want a detailed statement of the last 2 years." Betty blinked in surprise but nodded. She took me to her office and began typing on her computer. "Let's see," she murmured while checking. "You have your main savings account with a current balance of..." Oh what? "Well, the balance is $3,200. That can't be right." "Betty, 2 years ago I had $42,000 in that account. Those were my life savings with my husband." Betty frowned and kept checking. "I see regular withdrawals. Every month, for the last 20 months, there have been withdrawals of between $1,500 and $2,000. I didn't make those withdrawals. The withdrawals were authorized with the power of attorney that is in our files. Your son, Richard Sullivan, has legal power to make transactions in your name." I felt the room spinning around me. "Is there anything else?" I asked with a weak voice. Betty checked more documents on her screen. Her expression became more worried by the second. "There is a loan in your name, $25,000, applied for 8 months ago. The monthly payments are $600 and are being automatically deducted from your pension." "What?" "Yes. Look here. Your monthly pension deposit is $650, but after the loan deduction, you only receive $50 in your checking account. The rest has been going directly to the loan payment. That's why my pension seemed so small in recent months. That's why I barely had enough for my minimum expenses. It wasn't my imagination. They were robbing me. Betty, I never applied for that loan. I never signed those documents. Betty went pale. Mrs. Sullivan, if what you say is true, this is fraud. We need to report it immediately. Can I revoke that power of attorney? Yes, of course. I can prepare the documents right now. Do it. And I want to freeze all my accounts so no one but me can make transactions. Betty nodded and began working quickly. While I waited, I felt a mixture of rage and sadness so intense I thought I would drown. My own son. My own blood. He had been systematically robbing me for almost 2 years. He had forged documents in my name. He had used my power of attorney to loot my life savings. The $42,000 my husband and I saved over 43 years of marriage, working double shifts, denying ourselves luxuries, saving every penny we could. Almost everything was gone. And the loan. $25,000 that I would have to pay for years, reducing my pension to practically nothing. How long had they been planning this? How long did they wait after my husband died to start stealing from me? Mrs. Sullivan, Betty said, pulling me out of my thoughts. The documents are ready. The power of attorney has been revoked. Your accounts are frozen. No one except you can make transactions now. And I am going to report the fraudulent loan to the bank's investigation department. I signed the documents with a trembling hand. When I finished, Betty looked at me with genuine compassion. I am so sorry for what you are going through. No one deserves this, especially not from their own family. I left the bank dazed. The world seemed different somehow. Darker, colder. I walked back to my apartment on autopilot, not really seeing anything around me. When I arrived, I sat on my bed and looked at the photo albums scattered on the table. Photographs of Richard as a boy, Richard graduating, Richard at his wedding. All those memories of a son I loved with all my heart. Where did that boy get lost? When did he become someone capable of stealing from his own mother? My phone rang. It was Chloe. Grandma, I got the photos. There are a lot of documents. I'm going to send them to you by message. But, Grandma, I think there is something else, something worse. The photos Chloe sent me arrived one after another on my phone. I zoomed in on every image with trembling fingers, trying to read the documents she had secretly photographed from her father's desk. The first photo showed a colorful brochure. Golden Oaks, Senior Living. Specialized care for seniors. My stomach clenched. I kept swiping. The second photo was a detailed quote from that same residence. Shared room, $1,200 monthly. Private room, $2,000 monthly. Someone had circled the shared room option in red. The third photo froze my blood. It was an appraisal of my house, an official document from a real estate company estimating the value of the property at $245,000. The date was from just 3 weeks ago. I kept looking at the photos. There were more brochures for nursing homes. There were bank documents showing Richard and Vanessa's debts. $53,000 in credit cards, $28,000 on a car loan, $15,000 in another debt I couldn't identify. And then I saw the photo Chloe said was the worst. It was a printed email, from Vanessa to her sister. I read it in full, and every word was like a direct blow to the heart. Sister, we finally convinced Richard. We are going to put the old lady in Golden Oaks next month. I already talked to Dr. Henderson and he is willing to sign the papers saying she has senile dementia. We will pay him $500 for the favor. Once she is committed and declared incompetent, Richard will have full control of her assets. We will be able to sell the house immediately. With that money, we will pay all our debts and still have enough left over for the trip to Europe I want so much. The old lady won't even notice. In those places, they keep them so medicated they live like zombies. Problem solved. I dropped the phone as if it burned. I sat on my bed, paralyzed, while the words bounced around in my mind. The old lady. She didn't even use my name. Just the old lady. They planned to bribe a doctor to sign false papers declaring me insane. They planned to lock me in a nursing home against my will. They planned to medicate me until I became a zombie, and all to steal my house and fund their debts and their vacations. It wasn't just greed. It was pure evil. It was a calculated conspiracy to destroy my life, my freedom, my dignity. And the worst of all was that my own son agreed with this plan. I called Chloe immediately. Did you see that email? I asked her without preamble. Yes. Her voice sounded like she had been crying. Grandma, I am so sorry. I didn't know they were so cruel. I finished for her. The word is cruel. What are you going to do? I looked around my small apartment. My refuge, my freedom. If I hadn't left that house when I did, if I had waited one more month, I would now be locked in a nursing home, drugged, without any control over my life. I'm going to fight, I said with a firm voice. But I need more proof. I need everything documented. Can you keep sending me photos of what you find? Yes. But Grandma, be careful. If they find out I'm helping you, we won't tell them anything yet. First I need to build my case, then I'll act. I spent the rest of the day printing all the photos Chloe sent me at a small print shop in the neighborhood. I spent $15 on prints and copies. I organized everything in a binder, chronologically, with explanatory notes. The next day, I went to look for legal help. I couldn't afford a private lawyer, but there was a free legal aid office for seniors downtown. I arrived when they opened at 9 in the morning. The receptionist made me fill out forms and wait. 2 hours later, they called me into a small office where a young lawyer named Michael was waiting for me. He was maybe 30 years old, with messy dark hair and a kind expression. "Mrs. Sullivan," he said, reviewing my papers, "tell me what is going on." I told him everything. From the humiliation at the birthday party, to the discovery of the systematic theft, the fraudulent loan, the plan to lock me in a nursing home. I put all the evidence on his desk. Michael reviewed them in silence, his expression becoming more serious with every document. "This is serious," he finally said. "This is fraud, forgery of documents, misappropriation of funds, and conspiracy to illegally deprive someone of their liberty. We could be talking about criminal charges. I don't want to put my son in jail," I said quickly. "I just want to get my money back and make sure they can never hurt me again." Michael looked at me with compassion. "I understand he is your son. But, Mrs. Sullivan, what he and his wife planned to do was terrible. They were going to steal your freedom, your dignity, possibly the rest of your life. That cannot be ignored." "I know, but he is still my son. I still love him, even though he clearly doesn't love me." Michael nodded slowly. "Okay, we can proceed civilly first. We will sue for the return of the stolen funds, the cancellation of the fraudulent loan, and we will put legal restrictions in place to protect you from any future attempt. We will also report Dr. 24, Henderson, to the medical board for attempting to falsify a diagnosis. How long will all this take? Months, possibly a year, but we have solid evidence. The email your granddaughter photographed is especially incriminating. It shows clear intent to commit fraud." Michael began to prepare the legal documents. He explained every step of the process. We would file a civil lawsuit against Richard and Vanessa. The bank was cooperating with the investigation of the fraudulent loan. The accounts were already frozen, so they couldn't steal more money. "There is something else you should do," Michael said. "You should get a complete medical exam with an independent professional, to document that you are perfectly lucid and capable, in case they try to allege the opposite at some point." I followed his advice. The following week I had an exhaustive exam with a geriatrician named Dr. Lewis. She was warm and professional. She gave me memory, cognition, and reasoning tests. At the end, she smiled at me. "Mrs. Sullivan, you have the clearest mind I have seen in a woman of your age. There is absolutely no sign of dementia or cognitive deterioration. You are completely competent to make your own decisions." She gave me a certified official report. I added it to my evidence binder. Meanwhile, Chloe kept sending me information. She told me that Richard and Vanessa had started looking for me desperately. They had gone to the bank and had flown into a rage upon discovering they could no longer access my accounts. Dad screamed at the bank. Chloe told me over the phone. "He said you had betrayed him, that after everything they had done for you, this is how you paid them back." Mom cried, but they were fake tears. "I know them. Have they asked if you know where I am?" "Yes, all the time. But I tell them I don't know anything." Mom doesn't believe me, but she can't prove anything. 3 weeks after my visit to Michael, Richard and Vanessa received the official lawsuit. Chloe called me that night, describing the chaos that broke out. "It was horrible, Grandma. Dad broke things. Mom screamed that she was going to sue you for defamation. They said you are a cruel and ungrateful old woman, that they took care of you, and this is how you repay them." "And what do you think?" I asked her gently. There was a long pause. I think you did the right thing. I think they are the cruel ones, not you. And Grandma, I think I need to get out of this house too. Chloe's words worried me deeply. I didn't want my situation to affect her. I didn't want her to feel trapped or have to choose sides in this family conflict. Chloe, you're 16. You're still a minor. You can't just leave the house, I told her with concern. I turned 17 in 2 months, and after that, it's just 1 year to be an adult. Grandma, I can't stand being here. The way they talk about you, the things they say. Mom calls you a snake. She says you were always manipulative. Dad says you went crazy with age. Every word was a blow, but they didn't surprise me anymore. I had already seen what they were capable of. Hold on a little longer, sweetheart. Keep your head down. As soon as you are of age, you will be able to make your own decisions. In the meantime, keep being my eyes in there. The following months were a roller coaster of emotions. Michael worked tirelessly on my case. The bank's investigation confirmed that the signature on the loan had been forged. A handwriting expert certified it. The unauthorized transfers from my savings account were all documented. Richard and Vanessa hired a lawyer, an aggressive man who tried to paint everything as a misunderstanding. They alleged that I had given them verbal permission to use my money, that the loan was for house repairs that benefited me too, that the power of attorney gave me the right to handle my finances. But Michael dismantled every argument with concrete evidence. The email from Vanessa to her sister was especially devastating for their case. It was impossible to deny criminal intent when it was written so clearly. Dr. Henderson, the doctor who was going to falsify my diagnosis, was reported to the medical board. They suspended his license while they investigated. When questioned, he admitted that Vanessa had offered him money in exchange for certifying that I had dementia without even examining me. That confession destroyed any credibility Richard and Vanessa might have had. While the legal process moved forward, I was rebuilding my life. My small apartment had become a real home. I had met my neighbors, especially a lady named Betty, who lived in the apartment next door, not the banker, but a different Betty. She was 72, a widow too, and we became friends quickly. We drank tea together in the afternoons. She told me stories of her life. I told her mine. I didn't hide anything about my situation from her. Betty listened with understanding, without judging. Children don't always turn out to be what we expect, she told me one day. My son moved to another country 20 years ago and barely calls me. My daughter visits me once a year out of obligation. But I learned that the family we choose is sometimes more important than blood family. Her words comforted me. She was right. Chloe, although she was my blood granddaughter, had chosen me. Betty had chosen me. Michael, my lawyer, worked on my case with a dedication that went beyond the professional. I was building a new family. One day, 6 months after filing the lawsuit, Michael called me to his office with news. Mrs. Sullivan, your son's lawyer wants to negotiate a settlement. They know they are going to lose if this goes to trial. What are they offering? To return $30,000 of the misappropriated funds, to cancel the fraudulent loan, to renounce any future claim on your property, and to sign an agreement where they acknowledge they acted inappropriately. 30,000? But they stole almost 40,000. I know. But Mrs. Sullivan, if we go to trial, we could get more, or we could get less. Trials are unpredictable, and it would take another 6 months minimum. This agreement guarantees you get most of your money back now. I thought about it carefully. $30,000 wasn't everything I lost, but it was enough to live comfortably for the next few years. And most importantly, the loan would be canceled. My full pension would be mine again. And what about the house? I asked. They still live there? Yes. But according to the agreement, they renounce any claim on the property. You could demand they leave if you wanted. I thought about my house. My beautiful house that I built with my husband. The house where I raised Richard. The house full of memories, both beautiful and painful. Did I want it back? Did I want to live there again? No, I said finally. I don't want the house. Let them stay there. But I want the deed transferred officially to Richard's name. Let it be legally his. That way they can never say I live off their charity or that I owe them anything. Michael looked at me surprised. Are you sure? That property is worth almost $250,000. I'm sure. I don't want anything that ties me to them anymore. Not even a house. Michael added that condition to the agreement. A week later, both parties signed. $30,000 were deposited into my account. The loan was officially canceled. The house was transferred to Richard's name with a new deed. I was free. Completely free. The day the agreement was finalized, Chloe came to visit me. She brought a small suitcase. "Grandma," she said with tears in her eyes. "I turned 17. I can't take being there anymore. Can I stay with you just until I turn 18, please?" I looked at my small apartment. It was barely enough for me. There was no room for a second bed. But how was I going to say no to the only person in my family who had shown me true love? "Of course, my darling. There will always be room for you." I talked to Frank, my landlord. I explained the situation. He was understanding and offered me a larger apartment in the same building for $550 a month. It had 2 small bedrooms. With part of my recovered money, I bought a bed and basic furniture for Chloe's room. We moved to the larger apartment a week later. Richard called when he found out Chloe was living with me. It was the first time we spoke since the agreement was signed. "You're putting ideas in her head," he accused me. "You're turning her against me." Chloe made her own decision. I never asked her to come. She chose to be here. She's a child. She doesn't know what she wants. She's 17. She knows perfectly well what she wants. And what she doesn't want is to live in a house full of resentment and lies. Richard was silent for a moment. "This is your fault," he said finally. "You destroyed this family." And he hung up. I stood holding the phone, feeling a deep sadness but also a strange peace. He would never understand. He would never accept his responsibility. In his mind, I was the villain. And maybe it was better that way. Maybe he needed to believe it to live with himself. Living with Chloe transformed my life in ways I never imagined. The apartment that had been my solitary refuge was now full of life, of conversations, of laughter. She brought a youthful energy I had forgotten existed. In the mornings we had breakfast together before she went to school. In the afternoons, she did her homework at the table while I prepared dinner. At night we watched movies or simply talked about her day, her dreams, her plans for the future. "I want to study psychology," she told me one night. "I want to help people going through difficult family situations. Like us." It filled me with pride to hear her speak like that. Despite everything she had witnessed, all the pain and betrayal, Chloe hadn't become bitter. She wanted to use her experience to help others. Months passed. Chloe turned 18. We celebrated with a small cake, just the 2 of us and neighbor Betty. It was a modest celebration, but full of genuine love, so different from that birthday party of Richard's that had triggered everything. One day, while organizing some old papers, Chloe found something that made her stop abruptly. "Grandma, what is this?" she asked, showing me a yellowed envelope. I recognized it immediately. It was a letter my husband wrote me shortly before he died. I had kept it like a treasure, but I hadn't reread it since his funeral. It was too painful. "It's from your grandfather," I said softly. "Can I read it?" I hesitated a moment, but then nodded. Chloe opened the envelope carefully and began to read aloud. "My dearest Margaret, if you are reading this, it is because I am no longer by your side. I want you to know that the 43 years I spent with you were the happiest of my life. We built something beautiful together, not just a house, but a life full of love and purpose. I ask only one thing of you. Do not let anyone, not even our son, make you feel less than you are. You are strong. You are valuable. You are worthy of respect and dignity. If you ever feel you are losing your way, remember who you are. Remember everything we achieved together, and have the courage to choose your own happiness. Always." Chloe finished reading with tears rolling down her cheeks. I was crying too. "It's like he knew," she whispered. "Like he knew what was going to happen." "Your grandfather was always wise," I said, wiping my tears. "And he was right. It took me a long time, too long, but finally I had the courage to choose my own happiness." Chloe hugged me tight. We stayed like that for a long time, grandmother and granddaughter, 2 women who had found strength in each other. But my story with Richard and Vanessa wasn't over yet. Although the legal agreement was signed and closed, the repercussions of everything that happened continued to unfold. One day, I received an unexpected call. It was Vanessa's sister, the same one she had written that revealing email to. "Mrs. Sullivan," she said with a hesitant voice. I don't know if I should call you, but I feel you need to know something. What is it? Vanessa and Richard are in serious financial trouble. After having to pay you back the money and losing access to your funds, they can't pay their debts. Creditors are suing them. They are going to lose the house. I felt a pang in my chest. It wasn't satisfaction. It was pure sadness. That house, my house, the house my husband and I built with so much love and sacrifice, was going to be foreclosed on to pay the debts of people who lived beyond their means. Why are you calling me to tell me this? I asked. Because Vanessa asked me to call you. She wants to talk to you. She wants to ask for your help. I stayed silent for a long moment. Tell Vanessa that if she wants to talk to me, she can call me herself, but I promise nothing. Vanessa's sister hung up. 2 days later, Vanessa called. Her voice sounded different, small, scared. None of the arrogance that always characterized her. Margaret, she began, and it was strange to hear her use my name instead of ignoring me. I need to talk to you. I'm listening. I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I know what we did. I know it was terrible, but we are desperate. They are going to take the house. Richard is having panic attacks. Chloe doesn't want to talk to us. Everything is falling apart. I waited. I said nothing. Is there anything you can do? She asked finally. Any way to help us? Vanessa, I said with a calm but firm voice. You tried to lock me in a nursing home. You bribed a doctor to falsify a diagnosis. You stole almost everything I had. You planned to drug me until I became a zombie just to keep my house. And now you ask me for help. I know. It was horrible. I was desperate. We had so many debts. I thought that. You thought I didn't deserve dignity. You thought my life, my freedom, didn't matter. You called me the old lady, as if I weren't even a person. Vanessa sobbed on the other end of the line. I'm sorry. I really am sorry. I don't know what else to say. A sorry doesn't give back 5 years of my life. It doesn't give back the relationship with my son. It doesn't give back my sense of security. Then there is nothing you can do. I thought of my husband. I thought of what he would want. I thought of the person I wanted to be, not for them but for myself. There is one thing I can do, I said finally. I can buy the house before the bank forecloses. I will pay you $200,000, less than what it's worth, but enough to cover your main debts. But with conditions. What conditions? First condition. You move out immediately. I don't want you living in that house one more day. Second condition. Richard has to apologize to me, in person, sincerely. Third condition. You both go to family therapy. Not for me, but for Chloe. She deserves parents who at least try to be better people. Vanessa was silent for a long moment. And what will you do with the house? That is not your business. But I won't sell it. That house means something to me that you never understood. I need to talk to Richard. You have 3 days to decide. Then I withdraw the offer. I hung up the phone. Chloe, who had listened to the entire conversation from her room, came out with wide eyes. Grandma, are you really going to buy the house? If they accept my conditions, yes. But where will you get $200,000? I smiled. It was time to tell her a secret. Chloe, when your grandfather died, he didn't just leave the house. He also left a life insurance policy for $150,000. I kept it in a separate account that no one knew about, not even Richard. With that money, plus the $30,000 I recovered and my additional savings, I have enough. Chloe looked at me with amazement. So you always had that money, even when they were robbing you? Yes, your grandfather was very careful. He put that policy in my name only. He knew I would need it someday. 3 days later, Richard called. His voice sounded defeated, tired. We accept your conditions, he said simply. The meeting took place in Michael's office, my lawyer. Neutral territory. Richard and Vanessa arrived on time, something that surprised me. They looked different, thinner, paler, with deep, dark circles that spoke of sleepless nights. Michael had prepared all the documents: the sale of the house, the immediate move-out agreement, the commitment to attend family therapy. Everything was there, ready to sign. But before any signature, I had one more condition to fulfill. Richard, I said, looking him directly in the eyes. You said you would apologize. He lowered his gaze. His hands shook slightly on the table. Vanessa touched his arm, encouraging him. Richard looked up slowly. For the first time in years, he really looked at me. Not through me, not ignoring me. He looked at me for real. "Mom," he began, and his voice cracked. I don't even know where to start. What we did was unforgivable. We stole from you. We lied to you. We planned to take away your freedom. And all for money, for debts we created ourselves with our ridiculous lifestyle." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I spent these months trying to justify myself, telling myself you were exaggerating, that you betrayed us first. But it was a lie. I betrayed you. I allowed Vanessa to treat you badly. I used your trust to steal from you. I shoved my own mother and yelled at her in front of everyone on my birthday." Tears began to roll down his cheeks. "Dad would be so disappointed in me. He loved you so much. He respected you so much. And I turned you into a servant in your own house, the house you built together with such sacrifice. I have no excuse. I have no justification. I only have shame." Vanessa was crying too now, quietly. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Richard continued. "I don't deserve your forgiveness. I just want you to know I'm sorry. I'm sorry for every day I made you feel invisible. I'm sorry for every cruel word I let pass. I'm sorry for losing you as a mother, because I was too selfish and cowardly to value you when I had you." He covered his face with his hands and sobbed. They were deep, heart-wrenching sobs from someone who was finally facing the magnitude of his actions. I felt something move in my chest. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was something. A small crack of compassion for the broken man in front of me who was once my little boy. "Richard," I said softly, "I appreciate your apology. I know it was hard, but apologies are just words if they aren't accompanied by real change." He nodded without uncovering his face. "That's why therapy is not optional," I continued. "That's why you need to work on yourself. And that's why, even though I am buying the house, it doesn't mean everything is forgiven or forgotten. It means I am giving you a chance to start over without the weight of this debt. What you do with that chance depends completely on you." Vanessa spoke for the first time. "Margaret, I'm sorry too. I was horrible to you. I saw you as an obstacle instead of as a person, as my husband's mother who deserved respect. I let my ambition and my greed destroy any chance of having a real relationship with you." I looked at her. Her eyes were red and swollen. For the first time, her carefully maintained beauty had crumbled, revealing a scared and remorseful woman. "Forgiveness takes time," I said to both of them. "Maybe someday we can have some kind of relationship, but it won't be soon. And it will never be like before, because the before was broken." We signed the documents. Michael supervised every signature, every initial. $200,000 were transferred from my account to theirs. The deed to the house was transferred to my name. My house, mine again, but this time, completely mine, with no one who could claim it. "You have 2 weeks to move out," Michael said. "After that, any belonging left behind will be considered abandoned." Richard and Vanessa nodded. They got up to leave, but Richard stopped at the door. "Mom, is there any chance Chloe comes back home?" "That is Chloe's decision, not mine. She is an adult now. She can choose where she wants to live. Can we at least talk to her?" "You can try. But she is free to reject it if she wants. I won't interfere in any way." Richard nodded with sadness and left with Vanessa. When they left, I sat in Michael's office for a long moment. "You did something incredible today, Mrs. Sullivan," Michael said. "You gave them a way out when they didn't deserve it. I didn't do it for them. I did it for me. To be able to look at myself in the mirror and know I acted with integrity, even when they didn't." "And what will you do with the house?" I smiled. "I had a plan. A plan my husband would have loved." 2 weeks later, Richard and Vanessa moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. Chloe went to see them once, at my insistence. The conversation was difficult, but necessary. They apologized to her too. She listened to them, but made it clear she needed space. "Maybe someday," she told her father. "But not now. I need to heal first." When the house was empty, I went to visit it. Chloe came with me. We opened the door and entered together. Everything looked different without Vanessa's furniture, without her pretentious decorations. But the bones of the house were there. The walls my husband and I raised, the floors we polished together, the windows we installed with such care. I walked through every room, touching the walls, remembering. Chloe followed me in silence, respecting my moment. In the master bedroom, the one that had been mine and my husband's, I stopped by the window looking out at the garden. The rose bush he planted was still blooming beautifully. "Grandma," Chloe said softly, "are you going to move back in here?" I turned to her with a smile. "No, my darling. This house has too many memories, both beautiful and painful. But I have other plans for it." "What plans?" "I'm going to turn it into a shelter. A place where older women who are going through situations of family abuse can stay temporarily while they rebuild their lives. A safe place, full of dignity and respect. I will call it Margaret's Haven, in memory of your grandfather and in honor of my own journey." Chloe's eyes filled with tears. "Grandma, that's beautiful. Grandpa would be so proud. And you will help me. When you finish college and become a psychologist, you can offer therapy to the women who stay here." Chloe hugged me tight. "Of course I will. It will be an honor." We stood there, grandmother and granddaughter, in the house that had seen so much pain, but would now see hope and renewal. The story was coming to an end, but something new was also beginning. It has been 2 years since that birthday party that changed my life forever. 2 years since I left that house in the early morning with a suitcase and a letter. 2 years of rebuilding, of healing, of discovering myself again. Margaret's Haven opened its doors a year ago. The first resident was a 73-year-old woman named Eleanor, whose son had left her on the street after selling her house without her consent. She arrived with only a bag of clothes and a broken heart. She spent 3 months with us. Michael helped her recover part of the money from the sale. She found a small apartment, and when she left, she hugged me crying and told me, "You gave me back hope." Since then, 7 more women have passed through Margaret's Haven, each with her own story of family betrayal, of financial abuse, of being made invisible in their own homes. Each found refuge, free legal support with Michael, and time to heal. Chloe graduated from high school with honors and is now in her 2nd year of psychology at the university. She comes 2 afternoons a week to Margaret's Haven to do her internship, offering support groups for the residents. Seeing her compassion, her dedication, fills me with a pride I cannot describe. Neighbor Betty became a volunteer at Margaret's Haven too. She cooks for the residents, organizes tea afternoons, simply is there as a comforting presence. "This gives me purpose," she told me. "It makes me feel useful again." As for Richard and Vanessa, they completed the therapy sessions for 6 months. Richard calls me occasionally, brief and still somewhat awkward conversations. He tells me about his life, his work, how they are trying to live with less and value more. Vanessa sent a letter 3 months ago, handwritten, apologizing again and wishing me the best. We don't have a close relationship. Maybe we never will. But there is peace, a fragile but real peace, and that is enough for now. Chloe sees them every 2 months for lunch. She says they are changing, slowly, that Dad speaks of me with respect now, that Mom asks about me with what seems to be genuine interest. I don't know if it's true or if it's too late, but I'm glad she can have some kind of relationship with her parents. This morning I woke up in my apartment, the one I share with Chloe. I made coffee and sat by the window to watch the sunrise. My phone vibrated with a message. It was from Richard. "Mom, I know I have no right to ask you this, but could we meet for coffee someday? No pressure, no expectations, just talk. If you don't want to, I understand completely." I looked at the message for a long time. 2 years ago, a message like that would have filled me with anxiety, with doubts, with fear of being hurt again. But now, with everything I have built, with the strength I found, with the life I recovered, I only felt calm. "We can try," I replied. "Next Tuesday, at 3 at the coffee shop by the park, the same one where I met Chloe that first time." His reply arrived in seconds. "Thank you, Mom. See you there." I don't know how that meeting will go. I don't know if Richard and I will be able to rebuild something that resembles a mother-son relationship. But now I know something I didn't know before. My worth doesn't depend on him valuing me. My peace doesn't depend on his approval. My happiness isn't tied to his presence or absence in my life. I built a beautiful life from the ashes of my pain. I turned my tragedy into purpose. I transformed my house of painful memories into a refuge of hope for other women. I look in the mirror now, and I see a different woman from the one I was 2 years ago. I see gray hairs that I no longer try to hide. I see wrinkles that I count with pride because each one represents a battle I survived. I see eyes that shine with a light I had forgotten existed. I am 70 years old. I don't know how many I have left, but I know this for sure. The years I have left will be mine. I will live with dignity, with purpose, surrounded by people who choose me and whom I choose. To all the women reading this, to all those who feel invisible in their own homes, to all those who think it is too late to change their situation, I tell you, it is never too late. You are never too old. You are never too tired to choose your own happiness. I left that house at 68 with a suitcase and a broken heart. Today I am 70, with an apartment full of love, a purpose that gets me up every morning, and a peace that no one can take from me. If I could do it, you can too. The life you deserve is waiting for you on the other side of fear. You just have to have the courage to take the first step, to write that letter, to pack that suitcase, to close that door and walk toward your freedom. And when you do, you will discover what I discovered, that the most important person who needs to love you, value you, and respect you is yourself. That night of the party, when my granddaughter asked me if I was okay, and I told her it was the last time they would treat me like that, I didn't know exactly how I would keep that promise. I only knew I had to keep it. And I kept it, not with revenge, not with bitterness, but with dignity, with courage, and with self-love. My name is Margaret Sullivan. I am 70 years old. I am a widow, mother, grandmother, founder of a shelter, friend, survivor, and, most important of all, I am free. And this is my story.